I remember the exact moment I realized I couldn't hide anymore. The scent hit me first. Pine needles crushed underfoot, mountain air, and something primal that made the dormant part of me stir beneath my carefully constructed human shell. My fingers trembled as I set down the glass of champagne, the bubbles still dancing inside like my panicked thoughts. A hush fell over the embassy ballroom. The kind of silence that has weight, that presses against your skin and makes it hard to breathe. The Alpha King had arrived. For 10 years, I had been Rebecca Mills, cultural attaché to the Human Diplomatic Corps. 10 years of dyeing my hair the dullest brown, of wearing scent-blocking perfumes that burned my sensitive nose, of practicing a perfectly unremarkable walk that betrayed none of my natural grace. 10 years of hiding what I truly was, the last daughter of the Northern Wolf Pack, presumed dead after the massacre that had claimed my family when I was 17. "You look like you've seen a ghost," whispered Marcus, my human colleague, his bow tie slightly crooked as he leaned closer. His scent, aftershave and anxiety, momentarily masked the approaching threat. "Just tired," I lied, the words practiced and smooth on my tongue. A decade of deception had made lying as natural as breathing. These diplomatic functions always drain me, but it wasn't fatigue that made my heart hammer against my ribs. It was terror. Pure, animalistic terror. Because Kieran Blackwood, the Alpha King who had united the 7 werewolf kingdoms under his rule after centuries of bloodshed, was here to negotiate the new peace treaty with humans. And no wolf, not even one who had suppressed her nature for as long as I had, could hide from an alpha of his power. I touched the small silver pendant at my throat, the last gift from my mother before the hunters came. "Remember who you are," she had whispered as she clasped it around my neck. "When the world tries to break you, this will remind you of your strength." The metal was warm against my fingertips, as if it held some remnant of her love even now. The crowd parted like the sea before a storm. First came his guards, 4 massive wolves in human form, their eyes scanning the room with predatory focus. Then his advisors, sleek and polished in designer suits that couldn't quite hide what they were. And finally, him. Kieran Blackwood didn't look like the monster from human propaganda posters. He didn't have the glowing red eyes, or the hunched bestial posture that human films portrayed. He was worse, because he was beautiful in the way that nature's most dangerous creations often are, a beauty that signals power rather than gentleness. Tall and broad-shouldered, he moved with the liquid confidence of an apex predator who has never known fear. His hair was black as midnight, swept back from a face that seemed carved from granite, all sharp angles and uncompromising lines. But it was his eyes that made my breath catch. Gold. Not brown or hazel or amber, but true gold. Like molten metal, with that distinctive ring of deeper color around the iris that marked him as royalty among our kind. "Smile, Rebecca," Marcus nudged me. "That's what we're paid for, remember? To make nice with the monsters." I forced my lips to curve upward, but my eyes remained fixed on Kieran as he greeted the human ambassador. Even across the room, I could hear his voice, deep and rough-edged, like stones grinding together. He spoke perfect diplomatic English, yet there was something ancient in his cadence, something that belonged to moonlit forests rather than marbled halls. "The human representatives seem nervous," he remarked to the ambassador, a hint of amusement in his tone. "I assure you, we left our appetites at the door." Polite laughter rippled through the crowd, but I couldn't join in. The joke struck too close to home. Humans were right to fear what lurked behind the civilized facade. I knew better than most what wolves were capable of in their quest for power. "You should introduce yourself," Marcus said. "Cultural attachés are supposed to, attach. Besides, you're always talking about wolf mythology in your research. Here's your chance to speak to the big bad wolf himself." If only he knew how accurate his casual words were. I gripped my champagne flute tighter, knuckles white. "I think I'll observe for now. First impressions matter. I don't want to say the wrong thing." "Since when are you shy?" Marcus looked puzzled. "You're usually the one telling me to network more." Before I could answer, the crowd shifted again. The Alpha King was moving through the room, stopping to speak with various dignitaries. Each conversation seemed perfectly measured, exactly enough time to be polite, but not enough to suggest particular favor. A careful diplomatic dance. He was getting closer to our corner. "He's coming this way," Marcus whispered unnecessarily. I knew. Every cell in my body knew. The wolf inside me, so long suppressed, was clawing at my consciousness, desperate to be acknowledged. Run or submit. Those were the instincts screaming through my veins. But I could do neither. Running would draw attention. Submission would reveal me instantly to one who could sense such things. So I did what I had perfected over a decade. I played human. I straightened my simple black dress, touched my artificially colored hair, and prepared to lie to the most powerful creature in the room. 3 people away. 2. 1. "Ah, the cultural division," Kieran said, his voice even more resonant up close. "I understand you're responsible for facilitating understanding between our species." Marcus stepped forward eagerly. "Yes, Your Majesty. Marcus Wells, Deputy Cultural Attaché. We've prepared extensive briefings on human customs and expectations for your delegation." Kieran nodded politely, but his golden eyes had already moved to me. Something flickered across his face. A momentary tension, quickly masked. Had he sensed something? Impossible. My suppressants were the strongest available, my control impeccable. "And you are?" he asked, extending a hand. "Rebecca Mills, Cultural Attaché," I replied, proud of how steady my voice remained. I placed my hand in his, prepared for a brief, formal handshake. The moment our skin touched, electricity shot up my arm. Not metaphorical electricity, actual current, a shock of recognition that passed between us. His nostrils flared slightly, and those golden eyes narrowed a fraction. My heart stopped, then resumed at double speed. He knew. But instead of exposing me, he simply held my hand a moment longer than protocol dictated. "Ms. Mills," he said, and the way he shaped my false name made it sound like a question. "Your perfume is unusual. Custom made?" "Yes," I managed to say. "A personal blend." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "How unique. I'd be interested to hear more about your work in cultural relations. Perhaps you could join me tomorrow for the private tour of the Human Art Exhibition. I'm told it features historical depictions of my kind. I'd value a cultural attaché's perspective." It wasn't a request. Behind the diplomatic phrasing lay a command, and we both knew it. "Of course, Your Majesty. I'd be honored." He released my hand and moved on, but something fundamental had shifted in the universe. I excused myself from Marcus, claiming a headache, and made my way to the nearest restroom. Once alone, I leaned heavily against the marble sink, finally allowing my carefully constructed mask to slip. In the mirror, I watched as flecks of gold, my true wolf color, bled into my chemically darkened eyes. The suppressants were failing, overwhelmed by proximity to an alpha of his power. Tomorrow, he would get me alone. Tomorrow, he would demand answers. Tomorrow, the life I had built would crumble to dust. I splashed cold water on my face, willing the gold to recede from my eyes. As I reached for a towel, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Northern wolves have distinctive scents. Wild heather and snow. Did you think a perfume could hide that from me, little wolf? We have much to discuss tomorrow." The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering against the tile floor. The screen cracked, a spiderweb of fractures across the message that had just shattered my world. Outside, the full moon rose above the city skyline, calling to the part of me I had denied for so long. For the first time in 10 years, I allowed myself to feel it, the pull of my true nature, the yearning to shed this human skin and run beneath the silver light. A single tear traced down my cheek. I wasn't just Rebecca Mills anymore. I wasn't just a survivor hiding in plain sight. I was a wolf who had caught the attention of the Alpha King, and no one who did that ever remained the same. That night, sleep eluded me entirely. My apartment, normally a sanctuary of human normalcy with its IKEA furniture and framed art prints, felt like a cage. The walls seemed to press inward, the ceiling too low, the air too still and stale. I paced from room to room, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floors, a habit I had never managed to break, despite my years among humans. Wolves don't announce their movements. Prey does. And now I was prey again. The memories I had worked so hard to bury resurfaced like corpses in a flood. The night of the massacre, silver-tipped arrows whistling through the air, the screams of my pack members as hunters descended on our sanctuary. My mother pushing me into a hidden tunnel beneath the main house, her eyes wild with fear and determination. "Run!" she had whispered fiercely. "Run, and don't look back. Become someone else. Somewhere else. Live." So I had run. For days through the wilderness, drinking from streams, stealing clothes from campsites, making my way south where wolf packs were less common. I had collapsed on the doorstep of a human woman, a professor of anthropology who specialized in werewolf folklore. The irony wasn't lost on me. Even at 17, she had taken me in, believing my story about escaping an abusive home. Over time, she had helped me forge documents, apply to college, create the human identity that had protected me for a decade. Professor Helen Shaw had died 3 years ago from cancer, taking my secrets to her grave. She was the only human who had ever shown me true kindness without conditions. Without her, I would have been captured and killed, or worse, taken to one of the secret laboratories where wolves were studied and dissected to understand the biology behind our transformations. I took out the small wooden box where I kept her photograph and ran my fingers over her kind, lined face. "What do I do now, Helen?" I whispered to the empty room. "He's found me. The most powerful alpha in centuries has found me, and tomorrow I have to face him." The silence offered no answers. I moved to the window, drawing back the blackout curtains I always kept closed during full moons. The city sprawled below, a constellation of artificial lights competing with the natural brilliance of the moon. Somewhere in that maze of steel and concrete, Kieran Blackwood was probably looking out at the same moon, planning what to do with the lone wolf he had discovered hiding among humans. Would he expose me? Force me to return to wolf society? Kill me as a traitor to our kind, or something worse? Claim me? The thought sent a shiver down my spine that wasn't entirely fear. And that terrified me most of all. Morning arrived with cruel swiftness. I stood in front of my closet, staring at the carefully curated wardrobe that reinforced my human disguise. Everything in muted colors, sensible cuts, nothing that would draw attention or showcase the natural grace of my kind. Today, those clothes felt like armor, thin and insufficient, but all I had. I selected a navy blue pantsuit and ivory blouse, professional attire that covered as much skin as possible. Less skin meant less scent. I doubled my dose of suppressants, ignoring the warning label that cautioned against exceeding the recommended amount. The bitter pills burned my throat as I swallowed them dry. In the bathroom, I reapplied the chemical dye to the roots of my hair, where silver white, my natural color, was beginning to show through. The ammonia smell made my sensitive nose sting, but it was a necessary discomfort. I'd worn brown hair for so long that sometimes I forgot what I truly looked like. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Car's waiting downstairs. Don't be late for your royal date." If only he knew the stakes. I checked my reflection one last time. Satisfied that my eyes remained a dull hazel with no trace of gold, the suppressants were working, for now. I grabbed my bag, double-checking that I had backup pills, scent-blocking perfume, and my emergency passport. If things went catastrophically wrong, I would need to run. Again. The car ride to the National Art Museum was silent. The human driver attempted small talk about the weather, but I responded with monosyllables until he gave up. My mind was racing through possible scenarios, planning escape routes, rehearsing lies. The museum had been closed to the public for this private tour. Security guards, a mix of humans and wolves, stood at attention as I approached the grand entrance. One of the wolves, a broad-shouldered man with a military haircut, sniffed the air subtly as I passed. His eyebrows drew together in confusion, but he said nothing. The suppressants were still working, though perhaps not perfectly. In the cavernous main hall, my footsteps echoed against marble floors. The space was designed to make humans feel small, to remind them of their insignificance before the grandeur of art and history. It worked on wolves, too. Ms. Mills, punctual, The voice came from behind me, causing me to stiffen. I hadn't heard him approach, which was impossible. No one should be able to move quietly enough to surprise me, suppressed senses or not. I turned slowly, composing my features into a professional mask. Kieran Blackwood looked even more imposing in daylight. He had abandoned formal evening wear for a charcoal suit that fit his powerful frame with bespoke precision. No tie, collar open at the throat, revealing a glimpse of tanned skin and the silver chain of what appeared to be some kind of ceremonial medallion. His black hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd been running his fingers through it. The overall effect was of contained power, like a storm gathering on the horizon. "Your Majesty," I said with a respectful nod, careful not to bow too deeply. A human diplomat wouldn't know the exact protocols of wolf hierarchy. "Thank you for the invitation. Kieran, please," he said, watching me with those unnerving golden eyes. "We're among art, not courtiers. Formality seems excessive. A test. Everything would be a test. Using his first name would suggest familiarity, perhaps even presumptuousness for a wolf of my unknown rank. As you wish, Kieran," I said, the name feeling dangerously intimate on my tongue. He smiled slightly, the expression transforming his severe features into something approaching warmth. "Shall we begin the tour? I'm particularly interested in how humans have portrayed my kind throughout history." We moved through the galleries, past Renaissance paintings and medieval tapestries. Kieran walked close enough that his sleeve occasionally brushed mine, each contact sending a jolt through my carefully maintained composure. He was courteous, knowledgeable about art, and utterly terrifying in his focused attention on me. "This one is interesting," he said, stopping before a large canvas depicting wolves surrounding a young woman in a forest. La jeune fille et les loups. French, early 19th century. The artist clearly never saw a real wolf. The proportions are all wrong, the eyes too human, but he captured something essential about the relationship between our kinds. I studied the painting, noting the young woman's expression. Not fear, but a strange exhilaration. The ambiguity of her reaction, I said. "She doesn't know whether she's about to be devoured or accepted into the pack." "Precisely." Kieran turned to me, his gaze so intense I had to fight the urge to step back. Humans have always been fascinated by that threshold, the boundary between being prey and being something else. Don't you agree, Rebecca? Or should I call you by your real name? The moment had come sooner than I expected. My heart stuttered, then raced. "I don't understand," I said, the denial automatic after so many years. "Rebecca Mills is my name." He moved closer, not touching me, but using his height to loom slightly. "We're alone here," he said softly. "The cameras have been disabled for security during my visit. The guards are posted outside. There's no need to maintain the pretense." I glanced around, confirming we were indeed isolated in this particular gallery. My mind calculated distances to exits, weighed options, prepared lies. "Whatever you think you know about me," I began. "I know your northern pack," he interrupted, his voice still calm but edged with authority. "I know you've been hiding among humans for years. What I don't know is why, or even who you truly are." "I'm a cultural attaché with the diplomatic corps," I insisted. "I was born in Seattle. My parents were accountants. I have a degree in international relations from—" "Stop lying," he said. And there it was, the first hint of the alpha power in his voice, a resonance that vibrated through my bones and made my suppressed wolf nature quiver in recognition. I took a steadying breath. Why does it matter who I am? The Northern Pack was destroyed a decade ago. Everyone knows that. Not everyone was killed, he said, circling me slowly, a predator assessing its prey. A few bodies were never found, including the Alpha's youngest daughter. My blood turned to ice. He knew. Somehow, he knew exactly who I was. "The Northern Territories were absorbed into my kingdom 5 years ago," he continued. "I visited what remained of your family's home. The hunters had burned much of it, but wolves have good noses. I could still detect scents, the Alpha, his mate, their sons, and a daughter, whose trail disappeared into the forest. I remained silent, every muscle tense with the effort not to run. "I've wondered what happened to that girl," he said. "Whether she survived, whether she found shelter somewhere. Now I know." He stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "You've been hiding in plain sight, playing human, denying what you are." His voice lowered to a near whisper. "Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? The suppressants you're taking will eventually damage your nervous system. The transformation you're denying will become increasingly painful until it forces itself upon you, likely in public, likely causing harm." I lifted my chin defiantly. "I've managed for 10 years, and what has it cost you?" His eyes seemed to see through all my carefully constructed barriers. "To deny your nature so completely?" The question struck deeper than I wanted to admit. What had it cost me? Everything. My identity, my heritage, my connection to the moon and forests, the freedom of running on 4 legs beneath star-filled skies. I'd buried those longings so deeply I almost never acknowledged them anymore. "Less than it would have cost me to die with my family," I said finally. Something shifted in his expression, a softening around the eyes, perhaps recognition of the pain I'd carried alone for so long. "No one will harm you now," he said, and the simple statement carried the unmistakable weight of an alpha's promise. "You're under my protection." I almost laughed. "Your protection? You're the one threatening my existence right now. If I wanted to expose you, I would have done so at the embassy," he pointed out. "Instead, I arranged this private meeting." "Why?" I asked, finally voicing the question that had kept me awake all night. "What do you want from me?" He studied me for a long moment before answering. The Northern Pack was known for its seers, wolves with the ability to glimpse possible futures. It said that gift ran strongest in the Alpha's bloodline, so that was it. He wanted to use whatever latent abilities I might have inherited, of course. Alphas always wanted power, and information about the future was among the most valuable kinds. "I'm not a seer," I said flatly. "If that's what you're after, you're wasting your time." "You misunderstand me," he replied. "I'm not here to use you. I'm here because the peace treaty with humans is balanced on a knife's edge. There are factions on both sides who want war instead of peace. I need allies who understand both worlds." "And you think I'm that ally because I've pretended to be human?" "Because you've survived in their world without losing yourself completely." His gaze dropped to the silver pendant at my throat. "You still wear your mother's protection symbol. Some part of you has held on to who you truly are." I touched the pendant instinctively. "This doesn't mean I want to rejoin wolf society. Especially not as some kind of political pawn." "Not a pawn," he corrected. "A bridge. Someone who can help prevent a war that would decimate both our species." A chill ran through me at his words. "Is war really that close?" He nodded grimly. "Closer than the public knows. Extremist groups on both sides are gaining influence. 3 wolves were found dead last month, experimented on in a secret human facility. 2 human families were killed in retaliation. I hadn't heard about either incident. The news would have been suppressed to prevent panic. And you think I can help prevent this? How exactly?" "By being who you are, a wolf who has lived as human. By speaking with the authenticity that comes from experience, by helping me understand how to reach the reasonable voices on their side." He took a step closer. "And by accepting what you are, instead of poisoning yourself with suppressants." As if on cue, a wave of dizziness washed over me. I staggered slightly, and Kieran's hand shot out to steady me, gripping my upper arm. The contact sent another shock of awareness through my system, stronger than before. "The double dose," he said, his expression darkening. "I can smell it burning through your system. It's destabilizing your control, not reinforcing it." He was right. The suppressants weren't working properly. I could feel my carefully constructed human facade beginning to crack. Gold would be bleeding into my eyes, my scent becoming more distinctly wolf. I pulled away from his touch. "I need to leave," I said urgently. You need to stop fighting what you are," he interrupted, his voice gentle but implacable. "Before it destroys you." The room seemed to tilt suddenly. My enhanced senses, long suppressed, began to surge erratically, the sense in the room becoming overwhelming one moment, muted the next. Sounds echoed strangely, my vision blurred, then sharpened painfully. What's happening to me? I gasped, though I already knew. System shock from suppressant overdose. My body was rebelling against a decade of chemical control. Kieran caught me as my knees buckled. "Your wolf is fighting to surface," he said, his voice seeming to come from far away. "The suppressants are failing." "No," I whispered, panic rising. "Not here. Not now." His arms were strong around me, his scent enveloping me, pine and mountain air, and something uniquely him. I should have been terrified, but instead, I felt an impossible sense of safety in his embrace. "I've got you," he murmured against my hair. "I won't let you fall." As consciousness began to slip away, I felt him lift me effortlessly. The last thing I saw before darkness claimed me were his golden eyes, filled with concern and something else I couldn't identify, something that looked strangely like recognition. I awakened slowly, consciousness returning in fragments. First came scent, clean cotton, wood smoke, pine, then sound, a crackling fire, wind against glass, the soft breathing of someone nearby. Finally, sensation. I was lying on something soft, covered with a weighted blanket that felt oddly comforting against my skin. My eyes opened to an unfamiliar ceiling of exposed wooden beams. Not a hospital, not my apartment. I turned my head slowly, taking in my surroundings. A large bedroom with rustic but elegant furnishings. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a vista of mountains and forest, dusky purple in the fading light. The walls were adorned with abstract paintings that somehow evoked wilderness and movement. "You're awake." I startled at the voice, sitting up too quickly. The room spun briefly before settling. Kieran Blackwood sat in a leather armchair near the fireplace, watching me with those unnervingly perceptive eyes. He had removed his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle. The medallion I had glimpsed earlier hung fully visible now, an intricate silver disc etched with the ancient wolf symbol for unity. "Where am I?" My voice emerged as a rasp. "My private residence outside the city," he replied, rising smoothly and approaching with a glass of water. "You needed a safe place to recover, away from humans." I accepted the water warily, our fingers brushing in the exchange. The same electric current passed between us, though milder now. I drank deeply, the cool liquid soothing my parched throat. How long was I unconscious? About 6 hours. The suppressant toxicity was severe. His expression hardened. "You nearly died." I looked away from the accusation in his gaze. "I've taken those pills for years without issue. In proper doses, perhaps, but you panicked and doubled up." He sat on the edge of the bed, close enough that I could feel the heat of him, but not so close as to seem threatening. "Why were you so desperate to hide from me?" The question hung between us, deceptively simple. I stared into the glass of water, watching light refract through its clarity. "You know why?" I finally said. "The last time I was recognized as a wolf, I lost everyone I loved." Something shifted in his expression, a flash of genuine pain. "The massacre of the Northern Pack wasn't random, was it?" he asked softly. "You were targeted specifically." The memories rose unbidden, silver arrows raining from the night sky, screams echoing through the forest, the smell of blood and fear. I closed my eyes against the onslaught. "My father had refused to join the unification," I said, each word like glass in my throat. "He believed each pack should maintain independence, with alliances rather than a single monarchy. Some saw that as treason." Kieran's jaw tightened. "You believe the attack was ordered by wolves loyal to unification?" "To me? I was 17, I said, meeting his gaze steadily. "I didn't know who ordered it. I just knew wolves and humans worked together to destroy my family. The hunters had inside knowledge of our defenses, our escape routes. They couldn't have known that without wolf informants." He was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "I didn't order the attack on your pack," he finally said. "I opposed your father politically, but I would never sanction the slaughter of an entire bloodline. Yet you benefited from it," I pointed out. "With the Northern Pack gone, you consolidated power more easily." "That's true," he acknowledged, surprising me with his honesty. "I won't deny that the elimination of your father removed a significant obstacle to unification. But there's a difference between benefiting from a tragedy and orchestrating one." I studied his face, searching for deception. Wolves could lie, of course, but it was harder for us than for humans. Our bodies betrayed us. Subtle changes in scent, pupil dilation, micro-expressions. I detected none of the usual signs in Kieran. If not you, then who? I asked. Who wanted my family dead badly enough to ally with human hunters? That, he said grimly, is what I've been trying to discover for the past decade. The admission stunned me. You've been investigating the massacre? He nodded, rising from the bed to pace before the fireplace. The alliance between wolf extremists and human hunters set a dangerous precedent. Similar attacks followed, smaller packs, less political power. But the pattern was the same. I needed to find the source. And did you? His expression darkened. Fragments. Whispers. Enough to know it goes deeper than I initially believed. The same forces that orchestrated those attacks are now pushing for war between our species. I absorbed this information slowly, reassessing everything I thought I knew about Kieran Blackwood. The Alpha King wasn't the monster I had feared, or at least, not the kind of monster I had expected. Why bring me here? I asked, gesturing to the room. You could have taken me to a wolf healer in the city. Too risky. Your identity needed to remain protected. He turned to face me fully, and I wanted to speak with you privately, away from diplomatic ears. About what? About your father's research, my heart stuttered. What research? Kieran's gaze intensified. Don't play ignorant, Lyra. It doesn't suit you. The sound of my real name, unused for so long, sent a shock through my system. Lyra Whiteclaw, daughter of Alaric and Serena Whiteclaw, heir to the Northern Alpha bloodline, a name I had buried alongside my family. How did you know? I whispered. Your eyes, he said simply. When the suppressants began to fail at the museum. Northern wolves have distinctive eyes, silver-ringed gold, like the moon rising over snow. I've only seen that coloring once before, when I met your father at a summit 6 months before the massacre. I looked away, unsettled by how completely he had seen through my disguise. My father's research was destroyed in the fire. Was it? Kieran moved closer, his voice dropping. The attack wasn't random destruction, Lyra. They were searching for something specific. Your father's work on ancient wolf bloodlines. The research that led him to believe unification was dangerous. The pendant at my throat suddenly felt heavier. I touched it unconsciously, a habit formed over years of using it as an anchor to my true self. Kieran's eyes followed the movement. He believed the old legends about compatible bloodlines, didn't he? About what happens when certain wolf lineages mix. I swallowed hard. Those are just stories, myths to keep the bloodlines pure. Are they? He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement to give me time to withdraw. When I remained still, he gently lifted the pendant from my skin, examining the intricate design etched into the silver. This symbol represents the balance between royal and seer bloodlines. Your mother's family were seers. Your father's line was royal, the first such union in 7 generations. My skin prickled where his fingers had brushed my collarbone. How do you know so much about my family? Because I've been searching for you since I learned of your possible survival, he said, releasing the pendant. Not just for political reasons, though those exist, for personal ones as well. What personal reasons could the Alpha King possibly have for finding me? I asked, skepticism clear in my tone. Instead of answering, Kieran unbuttoned his shirt collar further and pulled out his medallion, holding it alongside my pendant. The designs were different but complementary, like pieces of a puzzle separated long ago. My mother gave me this before she died, he said softly. She told me I would someday meet the wolf who carried its counterpart. That together, we would either save our people or destroy them. I stared at the 2 silver pieces, so different yet clearly made by the same hand. That's impossible, I whispered. My mother told me this was unique. Not unique. Rare. There were only ever 2 sets made, centuries ago, when the royal lines divided. His eyes met mine, golden fire against what I knew must now be my true colors. Silver and gold. The marks of my heritage no longer hidden by suppressants and contacts. Your bloodline and mine, northern and southern. The implications staggered me. Ancient wolf legends spoke of compatible bloodlines, royal families whose union would create offspring of unprecedented power. Such unions were rare, occurring perhaps once in many centuries. The last such pairing had produced twins who had torn wolf society apart in a civil war that lasted decades. You can't possibly believe those old tales, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. I believe in what I can see and feel, he replied. And from the moment we touched, you felt it too. The recognition. The connection that goes beyond ordinary wolf bonds. He wasn't wrong. The electricity between us, the impossible awareness, it went beyond physical attraction or even the natural deference to an alpha. But admitting that would mean accepting implications I wasn't prepared to face. Even if there is some connection, I said carefully, it doesn't change the fact that I've built a life separate from wolf society. I can't simply abandon that because of ancient jewelry and myths. Can't? Or won't? He moved away, giving me space again. You've spent a decade hiding what you are, Lyra, poisoning yourself to suppress your true nature, living half a life. His words struck a nerve, exposing the hollow feeling that had haunted me for years, the emptiness that no amount of human achievement or connection had filled. I had no choice, I said, hearing the defensive note in my voice. The alternative was death. The alternative is sitting before you now, he countered. Protection, recognition of your birthright, a chance to discover who was truly responsible for your family's deaths. And perhaps most importantly, he paused, his expression softening. Freedom to be what you are without fear. The offer was tempting, more tempting than I wanted to admit. To run beneath the moon again, to feel pack bonds, to stop fighting the wolf inside me every moment of every day. But there would be a price. There always was with alphas. And what would you expect in return for this generosity? I asked, unable to keep the cynicism from my voice. Political alliance? Access to whatever seer abilities I might have inherited? Or something more personal? A flash of anger crossed his face. I'm not offering protection in exchange for your body or your abilities, if that's what you're implying. Then what do you want from me? Your trust, he said simply. To begin with. The straightforwardness of his answer caught me off guard. I had expected manipulation, political maneuvering, or at least some hint of the dominance games common among wolves of his rank. Instead, he spoke with a directness that was almost human in its clarity. Trust isn't something I give easily, I said after a moment. Not anymore. I understand that better than you might think. He moved to the window, gazing out at the darkening mountains. Leadership is isolating. Everyone wants something from you. Power, favor, protection. No one sees past the alpha to the wolf beneath. The vulnerability in his admission surprised me. Alphas rarely showed weakness, especially to wolves outside their inner circle. Yet Kieran had just revealed a profound loneliness that echoed my own. Is that why you brought me here? I asked, my voice gentler now. Because you think I might see the wolf beneath the crown? He turned back to me, his expression unguarded for the first time since we'd met. I brought you here because you were in medical danger. I continue this conversation because I believe you and I share a destiny that neither of us fully understands yet. Destiny, I repeated, testing the weight of the word. That's a heavy concept to put on someone you just met. A smile touched his lips, transforming his stern features. We haven't just met, Lyra Whiteclaw. Our bloodlines have been circling each other for centuries, drawing closer with each generation. The pendants are merely physical manifestations of a connection that was written in our DNA long before either of us was born. It should have sounded like mystical nonsense, the kind of supernatural lore that modern wolves often dismissed as primitive superstition. Yet something deep inside me, the part that had recognized him instantly at the embassy, resonated with his words. If what you're saying is true, I said slowly, then whatever connection exists between us is bigger than personal choice. It's a biological imperative. And I've spent 10 years fighting biological imperatives. I'm not eager to submit to another. Who said anything about submission? He approached the bed again, his movements deliberately non-threatening. Legacy doesn't have to be a cage, Lyra. It can be a foundation upon which you build your own choices. The consideration in his words touched something long dormant inside me. My father, for all his political disagreements with unification, had never been a traditionalist. He had believed in choice, in forging new paths while honoring old wisdom. It was why he had mated with a seer, despite the warnings about mixing bloodlines. A sudden wave of exhaustion washed over me, the day's events and revelations finally taking their toll. Kieran noticed immediately. "You need rest," he said. "The suppressants will take time to fully leave your system. We can continue this conversation tomorrow." "And if I want to leave?" I asked, needing to test the boundaries of this strange situation. "Then I'll have a car take you wherever you wish to go," he replied without hesitation. "You're not a prisoner, Lyra, but I hope you'll stay, at least until we've had a chance to explore what this connection might mean for both of us, and for the peace between our species." His sincerity was disarming. I had prepared myself for threats, for manipulation, for force. His willingness to let me choose my own path undermined a decade of assumptions about alphas and their hunger for control. "I'll stay the night," I conceded. "But I make no promises beyond that." He nodded, accepting my terms without argument. "Sleep well, Lyra Whiteclaw. For what it's worth." He paused at the doorway, his golden eyes holding mine. "I'm glad you survived. The world would be poorer without you in it." With that, he was gone, leaving me alone with tumultuous thoughts and the strange, persistent awareness of his presence even through the closed door. My hand drifted to the pendant at my throat, my mother's final gift. "Remember who you are," she had said. For the first time in 10 years, I was beginning to wonder if that might be possible. Dawn broke over the mountains, painting the peaks with rose-gold light that spilled through the windows and across my bed. I had slept deeply, without nightmares. For the first time in years, my body felt different, lighter somehow, as if shedding the weight of suppressants had lifted more than just chemical burdens. I sat up slowly, taking inventory of my senses. Everything was sharper, the scent of pine and morning dew drifting through a partially opened window, the distant call of birds in the forest, the varied textures of the bedding beneath my fingertips. My wolf nature, so long suppressed, was reawakening. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I called, pulling the blanket higher. It wasn't Kieran, but a young woman with warm brown skin and closely cropped hair who entered carrying a tray. Her scent marked her as wolf, though not of royal blood. "Good morning, Ms. Whiteclaw," she said, setting the tray on a nearby table. "I'm Nadia, part of the king's household staff. I've brought breakfast and some clean clothes that should fit you." The use of my real name was jarring. "Thank you, Nadia. And please, call me Lyra." She smiled, revealing dimples that softened her professional demeanor. "Lyra, then. His Majesty asked me to tell you he's been called to an emergency meeting in the city, but will return by midday. You're welcome to explore the grounds if you feel up to it. The mountain air might help clear the last of the suppressants from your system." I nodded, studying her open expression. "Has Kieran told everyone who I am?" "Only a few trusted staff know your true identity," she assured me. "The king values your privacy." After she left, I examined the clothes she'd brought. Simple but well-made jeans, a soft cashmere sweater in deep blue, comfortable boots. All in my size, all in colors that would complement my natural coloring rather than disguise it. I wondered if Kieran had selected them himself. The thought was unsettling. Breakfast was hearty and clearly designed for wolf metabolism. Eggs, rare steak, fresh berries. I hadn't eaten proper wolf portions in years, always careful to maintain human eating habits even in private. The first bite of nearly raw meat made my stomach clench, then relax as my body recognized what it had been denied. After eating, I showered and dressed, then stood before the mirror, confronting my reflection. Without contacts, my eyes showed their true nature. Gold irises ringed with silver, the distinctive mark of my bloodline. My hair, still damp, revealed streaks of white where the dye had begun to fade. I looked like a creature caught between worlds. Not fully wolf anymore, but certainly not human. I touched my mother's pendant, drawing courage from its familiar weight. "Remember who you are," I whispered to my reflection. The question was, who was I now? Lyra Whiteclaw, last daughter of the Northern Pack, Rebecca Mills, human diplomat, or someone new entirely, shaped by both experiences. The mountain air called to me, and I followed Nadia's suggestion to explore the grounds. Kieran's residence was more modest than I'd expected for an Alpha King, a modernized lodge built of stone and timber, perfectly integrated into the mountainside. The surrounding forest was old growth, preserved rather than tamed, with paths that wound naturally through ancient trees. I walked for nearly an hour, moving deeper into the woods, feeling the wild pulse of life around me. Deer had passed through recently, their scent fresh on the morning air. Squirrels chattered in the branches overhead. A hawk circled lazily against the blue sky. My feet carried me to a small clearing where sunlight dappled the forest floor. Without conscious decision, I slipped off my boots and socks, feeling cool earth beneath my bare feet. The connection was immediate and powerful. Energy flowing up through soil into my body, reawakening cellular memories of what it meant to be wolf. The urge to shift rippled through me, sudden and nearly overwhelming. It had been so long, a decade of denial, of cramping my nature into human form. The yearning to run on 4 legs, to feel wind through fur, to experience the world through wolf senses was almost painful in its intensity. I resisted, not out of fear, but caution. A first shift after so long would be violent, potentially dangerous if done alone. Yet standing there, connected to the living forest, I made a decision. I would shift again. Not today, perhaps not tomorrow, but soon. I would reclaim that part of myself, whatever else happened. It calls to you, doesn't it? I whirled around to find Kieran at the edge of the clearing. He wore casual clothes, dark jeans, and a gray Henley that did nothing to diminish his inherent authority. How long had he been watching me? I thought you were in the city until midday, I said, avoiding his question. The meeting ended early. He approached slowly, respecting my space. You look different today. I feel different, I admitted. Like I'm waking up after a very long sleep. He nodded, understanding without need for elaboration. The forest helps. It remembers what we are, even when we forget. We stood in silence for a moment, sharing the stillness of the clearing, the quality of light, the chorus of subtle forest sounds. It was companionable in a way I hadn't experienced in years, the simple comfort of being with another wolf who understood what it meant to exist in this dual reality. I've been thinking about what you said last night, I finally offered. About destiny and bloodlines and connection. And? His voice was carefully neutral, but his eyes betrayed intense interest. I'm not ready to accept all of it, I said honestly. 10 years of living as human taught me to question supernatural explanations. But I can't deny there's something between us that defies ordinary understanding. He seemed pleased with this concession. That's a start. It's not acceptance, I cautioned. Just acknowledgement of possibilities. Possibilities are all I ask for now. He gestured toward a fallen log at the clearing's edge. Shall we sit? There's something I need to tell you about the emergency meeting. We settled on the log, close but not touching. Kieran gazed out at the forest, his profile strong against the green backdrop. The peace talks are failing, he said without preamble. 3 human negotiators withdrew this morning, citing irreconcilable security concerns. Which means what, exactly? His expression darkened. It means someone has been feeding them intelligence about supposed wolf attacks in outlying territories. Attacks that never happened. I absorbed this. False flag operations to sabotage the peace process? Precisely. He turned to face me fully, the same pattern we've seen before. Create fear, build mistrust, push for conflict instead of cooperation. The same people who were behind the massacre of my pack, I said, understanding dawning. You think they're making another move? He nodded grimly. They've been patient, working in the shadows for years. Now they're accelerating their timeline. But why? What do they gain from war between wolves and humans? Both sides would suffer devastating losses. Power, Kieran said simply. Chaos creates opportunity for those positioned to exploit it. There are factions on both sides who believe they can emerge dominant from the ashes of conflict. A chill ran through me despite the morning sun. You need to identify them, expose their manipulation. I'm trying, but the conspiracy runs deep. with tendrils in both wolf and human power structures. His golden eyes held mine, which is why I need you, Lyra. Me? What can I possibly do? You're uniquely positioned to bridge both worlds. You've lived as human while remaining wolf. You understand their thinking, their fears, in ways I never could. He leaned closer, intensity radiating from him. And you have blood ties to the Northern Territories, where much of this manipulation is centered. I shook my head reflexively. I haven't set foot in the North for a decade. Any influence I might have had died with my family. That's where you're wrong, he said. The common wolves of the North still speak of your family with reverence. The White Claw name carries weight, especially among those who never fully accepted my rule. If you were to return, to speak for peace, you want to use me as a political symbol, I said, a note of accusation in my voice. I want to give you the opportunity to reclaim your birthright while helping prevent a war, he corrected. Those aren't mutually exclusive. I stood abruptly, needing movement to process his words. The implications were staggering. To return to the North, to reveal myself as Lyra Whiteclaw after a decade in hiding, it would change everything. End any possibility of returning to my human life. I can't just reappear, I said, pacing the small clearing. There would be questions, suspicions. The people who killed my family might come after me again. They almost certainly would, Kieran agreed, rising to his feet. Which is why you would have my full protection. Guards, resources, political backing, and the price for this protection? I asked, unable to keep the skepticism from my voice. What would you expect in return, beyond my public support for the peace process? Something flickered in his eyes, frustration perhaps, or disappointment. Is it so difficult to believe I might act out of more than political calculation? That I might care about your well-being, independent of what you can do for me? The earnestness in his voice gave me pause. My decade among humans had taught me to be wary of those in power, to look for the self-interest behind every generous offer. But Kieran kept defying my expectations, showing glimpses of a wolf who carried the weight of kingship without being corrupted by it. I don't know what to believe anymore, I admitted quietly. Everything I thought I knew has been upended in the past 24 hours. He moved closer, his movements deliberate, non-threatening. Then believe what you feel, Lyra. Not what you think you should feel based on old assumptions, but what your instincts are telling you right now. My instincts. For so long I had suppressed them, distrusted them, buried them beneath layers of human rationality. What were they saying now? That Kieran Blackwood was not the enemy I had feared, that the connection between us was real and significant, that I was tired of running, of hiding, of denying the essential truth of what I was. I began, then stopped, the words difficult after so many years of careful speech. I feel drawn to you in ways that frighten me. I feel like I'm standing at a crossroads, and whichever path I choose, I can never go back. And I touched my pendant again, drawing strength from it. I feel my mother would want me to be brave enough to reclaim what was taken from me. Something softened in Kieran's expression. A vulnerability I wouldn't have believed possible in an alpha of his power. Your mother would be proud of the strength you've shown, Lyra. Surviving alone, adapting to a foreign world, carrying your heritage even in secret. You didn't know my mother, I said, but without heat. No, he agreed. But I know what it means to lose family, to carry their legacy alone. He hesitated, then added, my parents were assassinated when I was 20. Political rivals who opposed unification. The admission startled me. I didn't know. It's not in the official histories. Officially, they died in a hunting accident. His jaw tightened. I've spent the past 15 years building alliances, consolidating power, working toward a unified wolf society that could make peace with humans. And at every step, the same hidden forces have worked to undermine those efforts. I studied him with new eyes, seeing not just the alpha king but the wolf beneath, a survivor like me, shaped by loss and duty. You think our families were targeted by the same people? I know it, he said with quiet certainty. The pattern is identical, the methods, the timing. Someone has been systematically eliminating wolves who work for unity and peace. And now they're pushing for war, I concluded, to destroy what you've built. He nodded grimly. Unless we stop them. The word caught my attention. We? You and I, he said simply. Together. The pendant at my throat seemed to warm at his words, as if responding to some ancient recognition. I thought of my father's research, the studies of compatible bloodlines, the legends of wolves whose union could shift the balance of power. Had he known, somehow, what fate had in store for his daughter? If I agree to help you, I said carefully, I need something in return. Name it. His response was immediate, without calculation. The truth about who killed my family. Not theories or suspicions. Proof. Names. And when we find them, I met his gaze steadily. Justice, not politics. Not expedience. Real justice. You have my word, he said, and I felt the weight of an alpha's promise settle between us. We find them together. We bring them to justice together. The wind shifted, bringing with it the scent of approaching rain. Above us, clouds began to gather, darkening the forest canopy. The clearing no longer felt quite so safe and secluded. We should head back, Kieran said, glancing at the sky. Mountain storms can be sudden and severe. As if in answer, a low rumble of thunder rolled across the distant peaks. We started walking, following the path back toward the lodge. The first heavy droplets began to fall just as the building came into view, pattering against leaves and soil. We quickened our pace, but the skies opened before we could reach shelter. Rain poured down, drenching us in seconds. Kieran grabbed my hand, pulling me into a run across the open ground between forest and lodge. By the time we reached the covered porch, we were both soaked through. I pushed wet hair from my face, laughing despite myself at the absurdity of the Alpha King looking like a drowned rat. Kieran smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious features. Raindrops clung to his eyelashes, caught the light as they trailed down his face. For a moment, he looked younger, unburdened by the weight of leadership and legacy. You should laugh more often, he said softly. It suits you. Our eyes locked, and the awareness between us intensified, humming like electricity in the rain-washed air. He was still holding my hand, I realized. Neither of us had let go after our dash through the downpour. Slowly, deliberately, he raised our joined hands, with his eyes still holding mine. He turned my wrist gently and pressed his lips to the pulse point there, a gesture as old as wolf society itself. Not a claim of ownership, but a recognition of worth, of respect, of potential bond. The touch sent heat flooding through me, awakening sensations I had denied myself for a decade. My wolf nature surged in response, recognizing his call on a level beyond conscious thought. Lyra, he said, my name almost a prayer on his lips. Whatever path you choose, know this. You are not alone anymore. The simple truth of his words broke something open inside me, the last walls I had built around my heart, my true self. Tears welled in my eyes, spilling over to mingle with raindrops on my cheeks. I've been alone for so long, I whispered. I don't know how to be anything else. He reached up, gently brushing tears from my face with his thumb. Then we'll learn together, day by day. No expectations beyond what feels right to both of us. In that moment, I made my decision, not with calculation or fear, but with the instinct I had denied for too long. I stepped forward, closing the distance between us, and placed my free hand against his chest. Beneath my palm, his heart beat strong and sure. I'll help you stop this war, I said. I'll return to the north as Lyra Whiteclaw, but not just as a symbol or a political tool. As myself. All of myself, wolf and human experience combined. His smile was like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. I would expect nothing less. Thunder crashed overhead, but neither of us flinched. We stood together in the gray light of the storm. Two wolves who had found each other against impossible odds, drawn together by bloodlines and destiny, and perhaps something simpler and more profound. Recognition of a kindred spirit. I didn't know what the future held, what dangers we would face, what enemies we would uncover, what this connection between us might become. But for the first time in 10 years, I wasn't facing that future alone. For the first time in 10 years, I was fully myself. Lyra Whiteclaw, daughter of the North, survivor and diplomat, wolf and woman. And as Kieran's hand tightened around mine, a promise of protection and partnership, I felt my mother's words echo through time. Remember who you are. At last I did.